What's going on, Wolfpack Nation? Welcome back again for part 2, y'all. Now we're going to be breaking down the defensive side, baby. If you haven't checked out part 1 yet, make sure to go and do that first and foremost. We took a long, quick dive into the NC State offense for 2024, so make sure to go check that out first and foremost. But once again, we're joined by a friend of the podcast here, Phillip Danford from Inside Pack Sports. Y'all, again, always love his insight for sure. If you haven't checked out any of his stuff, his articles, followed him on social media, you're definitely missing out for sure. But again, and then for us, if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, you're also missing out as well. So if it's lighting up, make sure to hit it. But anyway, so jumping into the defensive side, to me, this is really, obviously, you know, it really just a lot of it comes down to that you don't have Payton Wilson there anymore. I really
that is the number one talking point, isn't it?
That's really what it is.
Yeah. I mean, even the national media too, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, now, but we both know, Phillip, for sure that definitely the defense wasn't as successful as it was last year, aka one of the top 10, top 5 defenses in the country last year, all because of Payton Wilson. Now, for sure, there's no doubt that Payton Wilson had a big stamp on it for sure. He was an eraser. He definitely got rid and helped cover a lot of some of the mistakes that happened during plays. But I'm still sitting here saying, you have Tony Gibson as the defensive coordinator this year for NC State. So no matter what, I'm sitting here saying that by itself automatically is going to say we're going to have a really good defense just because you got Tony Gibson back there. And also because you got Dave Dorn, who was a defensive-minded head coach. So you know that he's in those conversations with Tony Gibson. So I know a lot of people are having questions, be like, well, why didn't we go after more on the linebacker side? And so I'm sitting here saying, well, listen, if Tony Gibson and Dave Dorn put their heads together, they looked at this linebacking core and said, you know, okay, you know, we're not going to keep pushing, you know, because I'm sure they went after guys, they didn't get them. I'm sure that's probably part of it. But, you know, the fact that they said, you know what, we're going to sit right here. We're going to go into the 2024 season with Caden Fordham, with Sean Brown, with Javon Betty. That's got to say something, you know, that's got to say something.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you can't look at Tony Gibson's track record at NC State and say, yep, we're going to fall off a cliff. I mean, the man's he's put it together while he's been in Raleigh.
Exactly.
Payton Wilson was unbelievable. One of the best defensive players we'll see in possibly an NC State uniform. All right, this is a guy last year that had a tackle on, it was a little over 19% of every snap he took. He made a tackle. I mean, that's an insane number. It's an insane number. I think the next closest one on the team was Caden Fordham, actually was about 12%. So, I mean, you see numbers like that, and it just, you know, it pops to you. But this is still, I will tell you, a very athletic defense. And it's still a defensive structure that gives teams trouble, right? I mean, you look from a scheme perspective, this 3-3 stack that they run, right? I mean, you know, we've talked before about they love the barbell approach, where the barbell approach is, right, they will usually bring one end of the spectrum. It's either going to be pressure, right? They're going to be, you know, a potential 5-6 man pressure, and they're cover 0 on the back end, or they're going to be rushing 3 and it's going to be drop 8, right? So it's usually, you know, different ends of the spectrum. They love that barbell approach, and I think that makes it very difficult on defenses, but you do it from structurally, you can look the exact same pre-snap, and you could get, again, a cover 0 or drop 8. And it's very easy structurally how they align pre-snap. And so I still expect the defense to be good. Now, I will say, and I've made this comment now a few times, do I think they'll be last year's defense? No, I don't. I don't think they'll be last year's defense. But I still think this is a easily top half of the ACC defense, right? They still have too much talent, right? I mean, last year we didn't expect, you know, Brandon Cleveland to come in and do what he did. And I'll tell you right now, I am incredibly high on Brandon Cleveland as a nose tackle. Being strong up the middle of this defense, always important. And I think he is a heck of a player. He is a standout player right now, in my opinion. And so, you know, you're going to get him more snaps this year. He's going to be in the game more. This is a guy from a nose tackle position. He made a tackle on 10% of his snaps. I mean, that's insane. I mean, this is a guy that gets double teamed on the regular, and he's still making a tackle on 10% of his snaps. And so stuff like that pops with the defense. So it's going to be good, right? Now, the hope is, right, let's say they do come down a little bit. Well, can the offensive production, you know, make up for it, right? And I think that's from a big picture, the hope, and what I think right now is going to happen.
Yeah.
So for me, I have 2 D-line questions for you because I'm really curious. One, what are your thoughts on Isaiah Shirley, a guy that had to move over to offense last year because of necessity. How is he looking? I've just kind of watched him progress. We've had him on the channel, so I've kind of become a big fan of his. So kind of give me your thoughts on him. And then talking about Brandon Cleveland, I always hate comparisons, but I'm going to do it anyway. And the one name that comes to mind is Aleem McNeil. Kind of how would you compare him? I definitely see their games very similar.
Yeah. So with Cleveland and McNeil, right? I think the big thing, I had the opportunity to do a film room with Cleveland a couple weeks ago, and I really enjoyed my conversation with him. I'll tell you, he's kind of the gentle giant. He's
such a
kind
good
of soft-spoken, but he is just a massive man, right? And but his game right now is very much predicated on power. He is a power rusher, just a monster of a dude. I think the difference between him and Aleem had a little more of that quick first step to him, which, right, is that something that Brandon works and develops a little bit? I think that's where you're probably looking for him next in his progression. But in terms of output, I mean, Brandon, he's not quite to Aleem's level, but he's kind of pushing there, in my opinion, in terms of what he can do on the field. Like I said a second ago, 10% of snaps there's a tackle from the nose tackle spot. That's an insane number. So like when I do a chart of that, and it's like, this is the Brandon Cleveland chart because it pops. And I think a lot of him. Now, my real question is going to be behind him, right? Mm-hmm. I think, that's where, I made this comment the other day on our IPS podcast after we got done with that first practice. Cleveland is so big that when the second and third string nose tackles step up, you're like, boy, that's a lot smaller of a guy. Like, it's just, whether it's Chaz Wallace and DJ Jackson, those were the other two behind him. They just don't take up that space that he does, but that's not taken away from them as players. I'm still very interested to see it, but Cleveland pops, man. He pops, I think, a lot of him. In terms of Isaiah Shirley, now this would be very interesting. I was not necessarily on the side that thought he had to go back to the defensive side. I really liked him at tight end.
Yeah, he was great.
Now maybe he likes defensive end. Defensive end's maybe a little sexier than being a blocking tight end. I get that. But I thought his path to playing time was quicker from the tight end position, if that was the ultimate goal. Now, he's got some studs in front of him, right? I mean, when you talk about Davin Van, right, you talk about a Red Hibbler. I'm really paying attention to Trevally Price. I got the opportunity to talk to him recently and talk about his game and kind of what he's been working on this offseason. He's going to be a massive piece to this, right? This is a guy that has been pretty stout in the run game. I think he's really working to develop a little more in terms of pass rush moves, and especially the power pass rush, going speed to power. So he's going to be an interesting name. So Shirley, he's got the size. Like when you look at him physically with everybody else, he's right there with them. Yeah. He's just kind of buried a little bit right now. And so I'm not sure, unless he comes up here and really shows something, I'm not sure he's going to get a lot of immediate run at the defensive end position, just honestly.
Yeah. No, again, I mean, I think for the defensive line side, it really kind of goes back to, I guess, a point I can make in general. But, I mean, the coaching staff in general, the fact that I look at every single position coach and say, I feel good about that coach there. I mean, I feel good about it there. And because the guys at all these coach staffs have been here now for at least, now with, Nye being in his second year. But for the most part, 90% of this coaching staff has been here for multiple years. But you also, again, look at Charlie Wiles. You look at his, reputation, what he did for Virginia Tech, the development he was able to do there and accomplish there. And now even to NC State, develop a guy like a Davin Van into one of the, top, pass rush defensive line, prospects in the ACC right now. You're feeling really good about it. So at the end of the day, I think that with this defense, at least to me, Phillip, it really kind of sets up the fact that you look at where is the talent, where is the true depth, it's in the secondary. And so I think maybe and you tell me, Phillip, but I feel like if I'm Dorn, I'm sitting there saying, well, I'm going to invest in the offense because if I want to compete with the top of the ACC, if I want to compete with Florida State, if I want to compete with Clemson, and then if I want a shot at, competing, with some of the top 15 teams in the country, if I do make it to the playoffs, I need a really great offense. I have to have an elite offense. You're not going to beat those guys if you're not scoring at least 28, 30 points a game at the very, very least. So you're saying, well, okay, if I'm scoring that many points, that also probably means I'm going to be more likely ahead in a lot of those games. So, I mean, I really need to make sure that from a depth perspective, from a talent perspective, I can compete in terms of pass defense. So, do you think that, because obviously we don't have unlimited resources, to go and try and have the best of every single position, but you can be very focused in terms of where you put resources. So, do you think that maybe, Phillip, that's kind of the thought process that Doran went through his head? What do you think I'm way off?
The secondary piece is fascinating, especially the portal aspect of it, right? A lot of these guys were late portal additions, right? I tell you this, Jahad Carter at nickel came from Ohio State, previously at Syracuse. At Syracuse, he was all ACC, and they think a lot of Jahad Carter. I mean, that was super. That wasn't on my radar at all. But I think it's a fabulous pickup.
The safety from Auburn was late too.
Yeah, Kaufman from Auburn was late, and then Kerry Martin from, is it Toledo or Akron? Toledo, I think. Previously Toledo, West Virginia, where he was with Gibson. Yeah. I mean, a lot of these guys were late, but to be able to pick up that talent, this is a sidebar, but I do think it shows there's a lot of talent in the portal, guys. There's hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of kids in there, right? I think if you take the time and really comb it, you can find some guys. But that's, right now the expectation, I would say, is that Carter will be your starter at nickel, Kaufman will be your starter at free safety. And so that's two, late pickups in the secondary, from the portal there, and that's massive. I don't think you had to break the bank on NIL to get the guys, and so I think unfortunately that's a part of college football right now, right? You have to take the financial stuff into consideration. So I think that's huge for this program. Kaufman from that free safety spot, that's going to be the spot. When I say free safety, folks think about a guy like Tanner Ingle. That's Tanner Ingle's old spot, right? That's what Sean Brown played last year. This is a guy who's going to be in and around the box. He's going to be a heavy blitzer. He's going to be a major part of the run game. And every now and then he's going to be in some coverage situations, but he plays low in this defense. Kaufman is short and stout. That's kind of how I physically described him the other day. Which I'm all for. I'm a short, stout dude myself. So, all right, I got to stick with my people. I will tell you, Jahad Carter looks a lot like Sean Brown. He looks a lot like when I saw him. That was kind of my first thought. The nickel position that he's going to likely start at is massive for this defense. We had the opportunity to talk to Coach Gibson a little bit earlier in the offseason, and he mentioned how important the nickel spot was to this defense and the way it functions, because this is a guy who has to be a true two-way player. He has to be able to play in the box. He has to be able to take on the pullers, right? Maybe it's a counter game and he's got a box, but then he's also got to be able to play the deep third when they play drop 8 and, run with a vertical, receiver. And so Carter is, I believe, I'm doing a film breakdown on him right now. I think he's ideal for what they're asking him to do. So, and there's more. Like, you get into Bishop Fitzgerald, you get into Brandon Cisse, bringing in Coley, Marshall. I loved his film out of Villanova. Like, he really had some good film. And if Devon Marshall comes in there, let's say an Aiden White goes down and Devon Marshall has to come in. Now, God forbid, because Aiden White is a heck of a player. I don't feel like it's the end of the world. I really liked his film at Villanova. I thought Javon Baker at Central Florida, go watch them one-on-one. He played with him. He went step for step. And so there's a lot of high-end talent. I don't know if I remember this much depth in the secondary. I don't know. I don't know if I can remember this much. I'm trying to think back to a year, and I don't know if I do remember that, honestly.
No, no shot.
And speaking of the secondary, how are we looking for Boykin's ACL? Like, is there kind of a timeline on that? I know that was a big loss for the bowl game last year.
I know of no timeline. He was out there. He didn't have a brace on, right? And he was kind of stretching with the team, and then he's kind of off to the side doing the work. Just kind of, is kind of running and everything to bring him back. So I don't know of a timeline. Boykin is somewhat of an underrated player in this defense. And so, the timing of that injury last year stinks. I mean, right at the end of the year. Yep. So, it's going to affect the start of this year to some extent.
Yeah.
Hopefully he's back, but hopefully this depth, covers him until then. So,
well, and that's exactly where I was going to go. Even if he can't go right away, and and he is inserted at some point, that's just more depth. And that was a position where, we took some hits last year, especially early on with, was it Alford? Was it Alford? Who was it in the UConn game?
The guy that went to UNC, right?
Did he go to UNC?
Yeah, you talking about Jakeem Harris?
Jakeem Harris?
Oh, was it Harris that got hurt in the UConn game? I thought it was. Anyway, we can move on. But
yeah,
there was somebody else that got hurt. I'm just trying to remember who it was. I thought it was Alford.
Well, I'll tell you this, too. When you look at the schedule, this secondary is going to be challenged early in the year, right? Okay. Now, it's not a secret that, the NC State's two big games that we've all kind of been focusing on, right? Tennessee and Clemson, weeks 2 and 4. But, Clemson running that veer and shoot offense, that puts an insane amount of stress on the secondary in particular, but the whole defense. Then you go to Louisiana Tech. They're running an air raid style offense. Now, I don't think Louisiana Tech is a particularly good program right now, but they run an air raid style offense. Then you get Clemson the week after that. Obviously, we know Garrett Riley coming from an air raid tree. Now, I think last year he didn't quite have the personnel to kind of run the air raid I believe he wants to run, but supposedly they brought in some big freshman receivers, and they're going to try to stretch the field a little bit more. So the way I look at it, man, I think weeks 2 through 4, which are kind of the big weeks of the season, I think you're going to face some potential teams that are going to come at you. They're going to try to bomb you. And so this secondary's really got to be on point early in the year.
Before we continue, I want to take a quick second to tell you about our sponsor, Flatlands Jessup Insurance Group, that has your whole world covered, with agents in 5 offices throughout eastern North Carolina to help you decide how much coverage you need. Offering policies for home and auto, recreational vehicles, commercial, crop, health, life, and employee benefits. They are able to combine options to find a comprehensive solution that works for you. Flatlands Jessup protects the things you love so you can spend less time worrying and more time enjoying them. Find them on Facebook and Instagram at Flatlands Jessup. You can also visit their webpage at www.flatlandsjessup.com. So please make sure to go and check them out.
Yeah, no, and that's what I'm saying is that, and especially because one comment actually really stood out to me, which I laughed at pretty hard when I was watching ACC Media Day, where I think it was Joe Giglio and Joe Ovies, where they kind of asked Doran, being like, Doran usually particularly like to win games like 17-14 or like 21-17, like low scoring. But he was like, with how the defense, with how the team is set this year, it seems like it's setting up for like 42-35 game. Like, would you be okay winning that game? And Doran, without even skipping beats, like, oh, we're not giving up 35 points in a game, which I was so serious, and which I laughed at, but I also too, I'm like, oh, I love that, that mentality of listen, I feel so strongly what we have with Joe DeForest, Brian Mitchell, Freddie Autry, Lindsey, and obviously with Tony Gibson and Charlie Wiles, that listen, and then with all that and all the talent that we have in from the defensive side, and being with how pass heavy college football and football in general is right now, that's going to be a strong suit of ours now for sure. Just like you said, if Aiden White goes down, or if Sean Brown goes, or sorry, not Sean Brown, or if any of our deep, safeties go down, it's not going to necessarily be a backbreaker for us, which is a great thing to have. So, and just like you said, you have so many proven entities in that second and third string spot for sure. So again, I just love the swagger that the defense has in general, even with the loss of Payton Wilson. There's so much swagger there back there right now, and obviously guys want to be a part of it. That probably every single one of the transfer guys, say 99.9%, didn't say you're going to come in and have significant role from the jump. Probably with every single one of them, they said you're going to have to earn your role. It's going to be an uphill battle, but I guarantee you that you're going to be a part of a defense that's going to be one of the best defense in the ACC and one of the best in the country. That's the opportunity they gave to them.
They've all got playing time too. The 2 deep, it's wild when you look at. There's maybe only one guy that hasn't gotten a lot of run in at the collegiate level. Yeah. Right. Whether it's Kaufman, you got Coley right now. Right. It looks like Brandon Cisse might be the starter as a second corner, right, opposite of Aiden White. Now that could change, but that looks to be where it is right now. But Coley potentially behind him. Coley was going up against Marvin Harrison Jr. last year, right? You got one-on-one reps with that, right? Devon Marshall going up against Javon Baker. These guys have played, and the depth and the experience is just something that I mean, frankly, we're not used to, right? The secondary is very easy to point to. That's a question mark. We don't know how. I kind of feel like we do kind of have a sense of how these guys can play. There's actually a lot of tape on them. So,
yeah, no, I mean, I'm telling. I'll say it right now, Phillip. Secondary wise, I'm good. I'm not. I mean, I'm not like, oh my gosh. But I'm sitting here like, listen, for NC State, with who we are, with the resources we have, I don't know if it really gets much better than the secondary we have this year. You know what I mean? It's just simple as that. Greg, thoughts here in secondary?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even talked about Zach Myers at safety. I mean, there's a ton of just a ton of dudes. You got Cooley and Coley. It's a rags of riches back there. But I think, to everyone's point, it is such a pass heavy game now. Like, you're going to need guys out there to be able to cover. I did kind of want to switch. Speaking from a guy that going from the secondary to linebacker with Sean Brown. Kind of what are the expectations there for him? I mean, he's got some big shoes to fill, obviously, and everyone, keeps pointing to Payton. But I think the most important thing for fans is the set expectations, and he's not going to be Payton Wilson, moving down there. But he's going to be very serviceable and very, and I think he's going to do a great job, just because I think he's just so intelligent. And he can come up and make tackles. He can, cover in space. Just kind of give me your thoughts on him.
Yeah, I mean, we got our first glimpse late in the Clemson game, right? Payton Wilson kind of goes down with a little bit of an injury. Now you got Sean Brown stepping up to that will spot, and was he make a tackle in like 5 straight plays? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's wild. I mean, the guy instinctually, right? And that's kind of, we always talk about height, weight, and speed, and right, all these, metrics of these players. But one of the real separators is, do they have the athletic instinct to know what to do? And it very much feels like he has that, right? He's around the ball all the time, right? And I don't care if that's, how many sacks was he involved in? So one of the interesting parts last year is the linebacking group, as great as Payton Wilson was, right? It was actually down in terms of its sacks last year. D-line was up and secondary was up. Secondary was up because of Sean Brown, right? And on those plays, think back to his interception where he's trailing against UVA and Bishop Fitzgerald, knocks it up and Sean Brown makes a diving catch. The guy lives around the ball. He has the athletic instinct that I don't think you can really coach. It's there or it's not with some of these guys. So I think he'll be there. Now, the question for me is not early in the season. The question for me is when we hit the midway to the late part of the season. I do think there is a physical toll when you play in the box as much as he will now be playing in the box, right? Now, you're going to get, he is going to be potentially responsible for taking on the edge of, let's say you got a 315-pound guard, and they're pulling and they're running counter. Okay, yeah, he can do that a couple times. But when we hit late October, man, and he's had to do it now 60 times, physically, is he going to be there? I think that's kind of where I'm most, curious about Sean Brown is the mid to late season.
Well, and to that point, we have 8 games without a bye. Like, that's a long stretch.
It's a long time. Yeah.
It's a long stretch. So
I think Dorn said the other day it's the longest in his career. Mm-hmm. He's gone without a bye from a coach perspective. So, yeah, that's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Wow.
Especially playing in the South, right? I mean, with all the heat. And I mean, like you said, you got 300-pound dudes just grinding on you all day, just, beating you down. We talked about freshmen on the offensive side of the ball that can play right away. Do you see anyone on the defensive side? I know Elijah Groves has gotten some talk, but is it him? Is it somebody else that you're seeing with your eyes?
I'm not sure freshman wise we're going to see a lot. Groves would probably be that guy, and yes, they are very high on him. Like, tall dude, right? I think Coach Gibson the other day, and I can see it when he made that. I heard him make that comment, and I was like, yeah, I could see that. Very much reminded him from a stature standpoint of Payton Wilson. They thought a lot of him. All right, I heard that. All right, when they went and it was a recruiting battle to get him out of Tennessee. So maybe Groves. I don't have a lot of high expectations in terms of freshmen this year. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of them getting in the game because there's just dudes in front of them, right? It's just dudes. So
yeah. No. Well, and honestly, again, that's one thing which I love about the defense. Honestly, I don't think it's talked about enough, is the fact that this defense is going to be very experienced, very upper class heavy. which, that's what you want. If it's not necessarily going to be the most talented guys, you want it to be very experienced guys, which is what this defense is going to be. So, just like you said, in the grinded out games of Tennessee, Louisiana Tech, Clemson, and even through the later parts of that 8-game stretch without a bye week, you're going to rely on those experienced guys, those guys that hopefully can step up with their leadership to really be those driving points. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's keep going. Let's finish this. You know what I mean? We're almost there. Keep it going. So, and again, kind of that bend but don't break mentality. You know what I mean? Especially with this defense, which is like, hey, listen, we'll give you 2-3 yards. Hey, we'll let you get a first down or two, but we're not going to let you get in field goal position, or we're not going to let you get that touchdown. Like, and that's what you want. And honestly, again, with this offense, that's perfectly okay. That's perfectly okay. If you want to take a field goal, I'll let you get a field goal. Well, we're gonna go score a touchdown. Like it just love, just like you said, Phillip, beforehand. I just love how this team is built. You know what I mean? I love how it's built. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, you were talking about not letting teams even get in scoring position. NC State last year defensively, I think there was only 34 red zone trips by opposing offenses. I think that was third in the country or something like that. And the teams ahead of them were like the academies, because they just play these shortened games with less possessions and stuff like that. I mean, it's insane. Actually, how few times opposing offenses got in the red zone against them. Something to keep in mind, too, the other day, listen to that ACC show, right? Davin Van made a comment. Something, I like to track. I love the internal metrics, right? He mentioned a couple of internal metrics that are very big for them. I think, now publicly, everybody can kind of keep track of it, right? So 70% is their third down percentage, right? They want to win 70%. Last year, they won, I think it was 28%, right? So they surpassed it last year. But that's something to keep in mind, right? So 7 out of 10 third downs, they want to stop the offense. The other thing was a minimum of 4 3-and-outs a game. So I thought that was an interesting stat, right? That's the number that their internal analytics has kind of landed on. So I don't know. I when I heard that, I had to write it down, right? That's something to kind of keep in mind and track throughout the year, whether
I'll definitely be
whether
watching
they're
that
meeting
now.
their own internal metrics. Yeah.
This is going to come off wrong, but it's not a slight at any stretch of the imagination. You have such great people up front. You got great people in the secondary, and I know people want to keep bagging on the linebackers for some stupid reason because someone's not going to be there. But with that being said, I think you have such great upfront play and so really good secondary play. I think that if there are any holes in the linebackers, I think it can be masked very well. Kind of, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the linebacker position has been the position of question, right? This whole offseason.
I mean, it has. I mean, I hate bagging on it, but it's just what everyone wants to talk about. Yeah.
And I'll say, for anybody who listens to IPS, I've been talking about the linebacker position since December. In particular, Devon Betty. Devon Betty's been the guy that kind of caught my eye, that when he was playing the mic, I didn't necessarily feel that the production was being maximized in a way, right? So I questioned and asked back in December, like, is he more of a Sam? Physically, does he need to be out of the box a little bit more? So in the spring, we came along, and he was second string Mike, right? Caden Fordham had kind of stepped up into that position. So then the other day when we get out of practice, I wasn't shocked. I did have a little smile on my face when I saw Betty as the first string Sam backer, right? And that's kind of like in my head back in December, it's like, man, I think physically that's where he might belong. Now, we could be completely off and it just doesn't work. But to me, in my head, it's made sense now for a while. So you get Devon Betty at the Sam, right? You get Caden Fordham at the Mike, and then we'll get Sean Brown at the Will position. I think you've got you've maximized your experience at that position. And I think you've probably maximized your talent. It was very interesting watching them the other day. The second string guys who were Jalen Parker at the Mike, and it was McBride and Bonner. Physically, they look very different. That is a much smaller second group than the first group, I will tell you that. But I will say, too, sorry, this is a little bit of a sidebar. It's very interesting. If you kind of look at the D-line and the linebackers under Tony Gibson, you notice the D-line keeps getting bigger and the linebackers keep getting smaller. Like, He's definitely changing the body types that we're seeing out there. This is going to be a fast run and attack style of defense, right? Maybe you see them spill runs a little bit more, right? There's a saying we always used to have: spill and kill, right? So we stop the run internally, we force the running back to go out, east west, and then because we're fast, we're gonna run them down, right? So we spill and we kill. So that's something that kind of jumps out to me, with this particular style of defense, but. I think from an experience perspective, everybody's played a lot of snaps. Caden Fordham, I said earlier, 12% of snaps he had a tackle on. I do think he can get better at tackling. That's actually one of my, critiques of Caden is, there were times I thought he was too high in his tackling. I think he needs to lower his center a little bit more and tackle with a little better leverage at times. Now, that's easy for me to say. Not as easy on the field when everything's going 100 miles an hour, but I think he can get better, and I think he will get better. He was one of the guys, as I did an offseason film room, I was just thoroughly impressed with Caden, right? And in particular, it was the pre-snap stuff, right? Me and him talking both on recording and even off recording. It's the pre-snap. It's the recognition of formations and what I'm likely to get based on this tight ends alignment or how the quarterback is looking. I mean, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, when you hear these guys, football is not a dumb game, man. And you have to put a lot of 2 and 2s together for the snap to kind of put yourself in the best position to make a stop. And I think Caden has that piece of it, right? Now it's just physically, let's make it happen.
The reps, right?
And so the reps, exactly. It's the reps. Last year he was splitting reps with Devon Betty, right? This year, right now, it's his, right? It's his. And I want to say he's the green dot on the defense.
Yeah, so, I saw.
For everybody not familiar, there's helmet communication this year, right? And so I'm pretty sure Caden is the green dot. In the NFL, they call them the green dots, right? I don't know if they'll keep that in college or not, but it tells you which one has the mic in the helmet. And Caden was that the other day. Yeah. So it's something to kind of, I think that says a lot for what they think of him in terms of intellectually on the field. Can you communicate? Can you get everything out correctly in time? All that kind of stuff. So the linebacker group, I think it's very fair to say this is where the questions lie. But with the current way they're structured that we saw the other day in practice 1, I feel much better about the group than I did, say, even a month ago, honestly.
Yeah.
Just as a sidebar too, with the green dot, I just am curious because you hear national pundits talking about like the college game is just sloppy, right? Like, not really doing great coverages, not in the right place. Do you think the communications, the headsets now talking to the players are going to maybe kind of clean some of that up?
I do, because not only are you going to be able to push out the play call, right? But you'll be able to give those quick indicators, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, we think they're going to do this. Hey, look at this formation. If this receiver, is lined up off the ball, on the ball, if he's in the slot, I think the coaches are going to be able to give these quick hints too that, hey, this is what we think's coming in a way, right? Now you'll have a time frame. You got to get it out. Yeah. But if you can communicate effectively, I think you're going to get those little pieces that are going to help the defense and the offense to an extent. Sure. So I think that could aid into a cleaner game. But no, that's actually a really good question. So
yeah. Well, and the last point which I want to make too for wrap this up here is, before the 2023 season, when we did one of the Savage Wolves events at the Murphy Center, and the people that were giving us a tour, including Payton Wilson, was asked the question, who's the guy this year that you think is going to break out? Payton Wilson was very quick to be like, we need to talk about Caden Fordham first and foremost. So even Payton Wilson has noticed the talent and the potential that Caden Fordham can bring. Now, it didn't obviously happen last year, to a breakout extent. But I think obviously a lot of that was because Payton Wilson was able to stay healthy, and play, 90% of the snaps last year. But, could this year be, could that prediction just have been 365 days later than we had expected? That's the thought. But Phillip, any final thoughts here about defense before we wrap this up here?
The big thing, we touched on it earlier. They've got such a difficult early stretch. September is going to be tough, man. This is a group. You're going to rely on them. I mean, they are going to have to put in the real work in August, right? I mean, absolutely. Tennessee in, week 2. I mean, listen, we'll talk a lot about Tennessee, I'm sure, between now and then. That veer and shoot offense, it's made to put up points. It is. So, I mean, you've got to figure out where you can take advantage of it. They will score some. Nobody's really shutting Tennessee out. And especially, I'll be honest with you, I think a lot of Nico, what film I've watched so far, I've got some more that I want to break down of him. But I think this is going to be one of the better offenses in the entire country. And so, you know, they've got to strap on their big boy pants early in the season, right? And so, I mean, that's what I'm looking for. You know, so I don't want to see Western Carolina to come out and be, you know, hey, we're just kind of shaking the cobwebs off and we're getting – no, I want to see – personally, I want to see them be sharp against Western Carolina, right? Let's put in a good, frankly, a dominant performance to show that we're ready for Western Carolina. I know they talk about, you know, the old saying, you learn the most or you get the best from week 1 to week 2. I kind of think right now they need to be ready week 1. They need to show their go. Yeah. So, you know, we don't want to have one of these sleepy performances early in the year that, you scratch by. Maybe we beat Western Carolina by 10, 13 points, but you're like, it wasn't clean. I don't know. With this September slate, I'd like to see a really crisp performance there.
Hey, Leighton, I had one fun question for Phillip, if you don't mind.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Payton White, does this streak continue of not giving up any touchdowns?
That's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a tough one.
2 years.
I'm just running through receivers in my head. Like, who's he going to play against? Right? Because I'm thinking like Bruce McCoy at Tennessee, right? I cannot remember the kid's name at Clemson, but I've heard his name brought up a ton. True freshman receiver, 5-star kid. I know they think a ton of him. You know, Carolina's got skill position talent. Their question's going to be at quarterback.
I guess, I mean, you kind of talked about it in your podcast when you guys were breaking it down. Like, is Aiden going to be moving around? You know, is he going to, you know, cover their best? Is he, you know, is he going to just stay in his area? I think a lot of that depends on
my take is he's probably not. I mean, I think he'll probably stay in his spot, especially you do that especially for hurry up offenses. You don't want guys having to cross and switch and do all that kind of stuff. Is he going to, man, 2 years? We played great receivers and great offenses in the last 2 years. So, I mean, right now, I guess, why not?
Sure.
Why couldn't he? I mean, to go 2 years and not give up a touchdown to, you know, a receiver, that's amazing. So what's to say 3 couldn't happen? So, heck no. Let's go for it. 3 years.
Let's do it.
I like it. All right, Wolfpack Nation. So again, if you haven't checked out Phillip Danford, make sure again to give him a follow on all of his social media for sure. And again, make sure to go give Inside Pack Sports a follow as well. As again, you know, can't say enough about their content, but specifically with Phillip, and his film breakdowns are phenomenal, to say the least. I definitely look forward to
that James Henderson and Alex. And they don't know anything. It's all it's all Phillip. It's all Phillip.
That's right. That's right.
We got a good team. I'll tell you that, man.
Yeah, you do.
We enjoy working together. Yeah. So.
No, absolutely. And then for us, Wolfpack Nation, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, make sure to do that. And also give us a like if you're super, super excited about in-state football, just like we are. And make sure to give us a follow, Tuffy Talk Now on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And if you're listening to us on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to us, maybe do us a big, big favor, leave a 5-star review. Greatly appreciate that as well. But with that being said, we'll see y'all soon. Excited for it to get started.
Less than a month. Y'all. Let's go.